This is a quick video. It's also unscripted like my last one, because I wanted to get a few little things off my chest, and what better way to do it than to make a quick video on it. So let's really make it quick. Remember this, it is a Yihua soldering station that I bought a few months ago, and I've praised it to heavens and back. I loved it. I even bent a tip on it, and it was amazing. And at some point, I had a soldering job to do where there was a large ground plane on it. And of course, you're really not going to use a small tip like this for a large ground plane. And I decided to use something like this. It's not the same tip. I tossed that one in the garbage because I was so mad at it. Okay, I'll put this tip on my soldering iron, and lo and behold, it started sticking to the board. Every time I wanted to solder anything on a board, this is just an imitation board, this is a practice board I used, don't worry about it. Every time I wanted to solder anything that was on a large ground plane, for example something like this, even the small leg, it wasn't even able to melt the solder, let alone solder anything. And I was wondering, maybe the tip needed a while to heat up, you know? So I waited a little bit, and it still kept sticking. And I was like, okay, this is a huge tip. It needs a little bit more time to heat up, and when you touch a surface, it loses its temperature quickly. Just be patient, just keep heating it up a little bit, and yada yada yada. I've used about 2 minutes per connection I wanted to solder, aka desolder, using these tips. And then something popped in my head, and I was like, no. There must be a mistake. There must be something wrong with this, right? So I put the tip that it came with, and oh my god, it was eating through solder like it was nothing. And it got me thinking, okay, maybe these tips are crap. You know, they're made cheaply and they're not making good contact. As you can see, that's not necessarily true because the diameter of the hole is about the same. This might be a little larger, so when you put it on your heating element, this one feels a little bit snug. And when you put this one on the heating element, this one wobbles a lot more. But that wasn't the only problem. Another problem is that usually good tips get small, thin copper tubing inside. That copper tubing is so it would conduct the heat throughout the entirety of the tip and heat the tip itself much quicker. This one doesn't have that copper tubing. And I decided to take a file to these. So I took a file to it. Here's a file. And I saw that it was exceptionally hard to file. This one, for example, isn't that hard to file. I've damaged this part with no problem. But this one is not. This one is not even rounded. And it got me thinking. At first, I thought that this cheapo tip was made of aluminium. And aluminium is similar to copper in that way that it transfers heat and electricity nearly as well. It's copper's a little bit better, but you know, aluminium is a close second. But this part is not made of aluminium. It's made of aluminium oxide. It's maybe made out of some El Cheapo metal, but the cover on it, the enameling is not steel, nor copper, nor aluminium. The enameling is from the oxide. I'll post a video in the description where a jeweler tried to imitate Ron Swanson and make a ring out of a sconce. The problem was the sconce wasn't made from aluminum, it was made from aluminum oxide. And it didn't melt. If you don't know, if you skip chemistry classes, oxides of any metals have very, very, very high melting points. And they absorb a lot of heat. And when you use something like this, when you use a tip made of aluminum oxide, when it loses its heat, I'm sorry, really, if you can hear the neighborhood dogs, they might be barking in the back. Oh yeah, one last thing that I forgot to mention. This one is pre-tinned. This part is pre-tinned, but the other, almost the entirety of it is made of aluminum oxide. Aluminium oxide, sorry. When you put this on a surface, it loses its temperature. Its temperature falls down. But instead of it recovering, because Yihua and similar smart soldering stations have a thermistor in them, so it knows when it needs to heat. It has adaptive heating. When it loses its temperature, the soldering iron, aka the soldering station, needs to push a lot of heat into this tip. Any heat that gets pushed into the tip gets dissipated just as quickly because the thermal conduction of aluminum oxide is not that good. Basically, what I was trying to convey in this video is that aluminum oxide has low specific thermal capacity. Specific thermal capacity is the amount of energy you need to push to a kilogram of material so its temperature would rise by 1 degree. The point is that aluminum oxide has extremely high specific thermal capacity. You need to push a lot of energy into it in order for its temperature to rise by 1 degree. So you cannot recover and you cannot melt solder, and you're basically wasting your energy. You will get there at some point, but doing 5 minutes per joint is really, really stupid. So you don't have to do that. So what do I advise you? Get genuine tips. Tips like these cost about $1, which is not that much. Even if you heavily use them, they're guaranteed to last you for a few months. I paid for this baggie of tips. See how shiny they are? $3 on AliExpress. And that, I thought, oh man, that was a steal. I'm gonna have so many tips. I'm gonna do so much work. Nah, wrong. I'm gonna bend this tip and I'm gonna demonstrate just what I was talking about at the end. But you don't have to watch that if you don't want. I'll go straight to the conclusions. Don't cheap out on your tips, because you'll end up like me, blaming the soldering station and fearing that, man, I've probably lied to my viewers or something like that. But no, I didn't lie to my viewers. I just used stuff that is too cheap. So yeah, let me just demonstrate that which I was talking about. Let's use the aluminum oxide tip first. I use aluminum and aluminium interchangeably because my English teacher always kept bugging me that aluminum was wrong. You need to say aluminium. So yeah, I will not go into that debate. Sorry. The heat is rising, but much slower. Okay, it should probably melt solder right now, as my soldering station says that it's 350 degrees, and it is. It's making solder at least. That's good. Okay, let's try to. Okay. As you can see, this tip is struggling. Okay, maybe I'm not putting enough solder. Maybe the contact points are bad. Maybe, yeah. See, it doesn't even melt solder anymore. Okay, maybe there's no contact between the two, so I need to enlarge the surface area. You see what I'm talking about? I'm genuinely struggling here. My soldering station is on. I can prove it with a thermocouple. I'm serious. I will wait. Let's see how long it takes to heat this ground part up. And I'm pressing down pretty hard. I'm pushing on it, and I don't want to do that. I might break my plastic. And is it melting? Is it melting? No, it isn't. I'm sorry, but I really don't want to waste my time anymore. I hope I proved my point a little bit. Let me turn off the soldering station and replace the tip. Ouch. Okay. Let's turn on my station again. Set it to 350. And let's wait for it to get to 350. Okay, it says 250. It says 270. And at 280, it should probably melt. Yes, it's 280 and it's melting solder. Already, it works better. Now let's see how long it takes for it. No, it didn't get to temperature yet. Sorry. Let's make this test a little more fair. Okay. 351. Okay, let's see. And it's melted. And as you can see, it's melting. It's melting. It's melting in a few seconds. So seriously, guys, don't cheap out. The reason I cheaped out is at the time I bought those tips, I was still in college. And like every college student, I was broke. But you can see that, right? You can see that it melts and I can keep feeding and solder, feeding and solder, feeding and solder until I make an ugly blob on it. But yeah, beats the heck out of the last one, right? And because of garbage like this, I was afraid of wicking my solder with a solder braid, with a solder wick. I genuinely was afraid. I was like, oh my god, I'm never gonna be able to get this solder off. That's legit what I thought. But when you use high quality stuff, and there it is, wicking isn't a problem either. And that's it. Just reflow a little bit, and that's it. Like you see, let's wick the excess off. And there it is. It's wicking beautifully. Okay. Let's reflow to make it pretty. And that's it. Seriously, guys, don't cheap out.